All right, everyone. Thank you for joining me here on today's episode. We're talking about all things buying land, what you need to know before buying a piece of property, things that a lot of people wish they had known before they bought property. And so I'm going to give you kind of the top 10 things that I would look for when buying a piece of property, especially buying land that is off the grid. So I'm here in West Tennessee on the property that I purchased last year, about 20 acres, and it's beautiful and I love it. And I tried to be as informed as possible when purchasing it. And so I'm going to share with you some tips that hopefully you'll find beneficial if you're looking to buy some land. So the first is location. Of course, everyone's going to start with that. The location is probably the most important thing for you to consider. Now, I'm kind of thinking more like off-grid property, so schools and things like that were not as important to me. But when you get out in the middle of nowhere, typically your taxes are going to be lower. There's no public transportation and things like that. But again, that's exactly what I'm looking for. So the location is super important. When I was looking to buy land, I was looking in West Tennessee, a little bit in Arkansas, and in North Mississippi. And I discovered that land in Mississippi was significantly cheaper than land in Tennessee. But when I drove out there, I kind of discovered why. And I'm not knocking on anybody in Mississippi, but it was a different vibe than it was in Tennessee. And so I decided to stay here in Tennessee. The second thing is zoning and land use. What can you use your land for? It's important to research all of these things. If you want to build a cabin, like what I'm doing right now, I'm building an off-grid cabin. Are there restrictions in place? Do you have to have permits for things? Here where I am, it's under a certain dollar amount you're supposed to get a permit for. And sometimes they'll say you can't build anything on it. Maybe it's protected like through a nature reserve or things like that. Important thing to consider. Number 3 is the soil and topography. One of the things that I was looking for when I bought this land was I wanted something that was relatively flat so that I could have access to pretty much all of it. And I wanted something that was completely covered in trees. I know people who've bought land to hike and camp and hunt and fish and things like that. And when you buy things that is just like an open field, you're going to discover that you're going to have to spend a lot of time and money to maintain that. So you may have to buy a tractor with a bush hog to cut down the grass that's growing in these fields. And I didn't want that. I wanted to be able to come out here and just start camping, and the ability to enjoy what I have without having to just like maintain it the entire time. And so, if things are super hilly, then it would be really hard and more costly to build a cabin. So, one of the things that I was looking for was just checking off my boxes that it was flat, it was forested. If you look behind me, most of the trees are mature hardwoods. There's very few pines. In fact, we had an ice storm a month or two ago, and we've had a lot of high winds, and a lot of my pines have fallen down. I've cut up just to use as firewood, but the hardwoods are still standing. And so I was looking for mature hardwoods where it wasn't just these little tiny trees just slammed together, that there was some openness and beauty to it. And so that's what I was looking for when it comes to topography. Number 4 is utilities and services. So check whether the land has access to basic utilities such as water, electricity, sewage, internet, and things like that. All of that determines how costly the land is, but you may not want any of that stuff. My land, there is power at the road. I could probably get it pretty cheaply to the cabin that I'm building, but I don't want to. I want to be off grid, and I want to be kind of nestled down here in the woods, which is why I chose the cabin site that I chose. I did get a quote on a well. It was over $8,000, so I'm probably not going to go that route, especially when I have a year-round creek here on my property that I have access to water. And so for me, that wasn't that big of a deal. But if you're going to like build a home and stay on the grid, very important things to consider. Number 5 is accessibility and road connectivity. So how can you access your property? You have to go through someone else's property to get to your property. Do you have an easement do you have road access? When I purchased this property, I had road access, and I had a very jank dirt road that kind of bifurcated my property, but it was connected. And so I spent some time and money to put some gravel down and do some grading, and I rented an excavator and did some of that in the excavator. So check out that video. But that was already in place, and to me, that was a bonus. I didn't have to plow through the woods to form a road to bring my truck down here in the woods. And so accessibility is a big deal. Number 6 is legal issues. Before buying land, it's important to conduct a thorough search and identify any disputes about the property. Is there a long lost uncle who is supposed to sign off on selling the property, but no one has heard from him in a while? Well, he's going to come back at some point and want to come on your property. And so check that out. If you use a real estate agent or realtor, they will handle all that with the attorneys when you buy the property. Number 7, natural hazards, flooding, earthquakes, wildfires. I have about 15 to 20% of my property is in a floodplain. That's about 100 yards to my right. And so guess what? I'm not putting the cabin down there because I don't want to be in a floodplain. But that was revealed on the front end. And I knew that there was probably some flooding because there's a year-round creek down there. But it's important to kind of look at that type of stuff when evaluating if you're going to buy a piece of property. Number 8 is environmental concerns. Soil contamination, endangered species, protected wetlands. I'm in what's considered a green belt. And that just means like, hey, I will tell the state of Tennessee that I'm going to try and maintain the natural beauty and habitats around me. I'm a amateur conservationist, so to me that's very important. And they give you a tax break. And so as long as you maintain things ethically, there's actually some good things that can come out of that from the government. Number 9, future development plans. Consider any future development plans in the area that may affect your land value and the use of land. I'm out here in the middle of nowhere, and that's what I want. No one's building anything around me, and that's why I bought so many acres. And so that's not a big issue for me, but you need to know, are there people that are going to be building around you? How is that going to affect your land value? And number 10, of course, is price and finance options. Consider the price of the land and how you're going to pay for it. I paid cash. And so for me, it was very easy. Is it within how much cash I had to spend on a piece of property? Now, would I like to be on 300 acres? Sure, of course I would. But I couldn't afford that. We don't do any debt of any kind. And so for our family, it was a no-brainer. This ticked off. That sounds really weird. This checked off all the boxes that we had when looking for a property. I wanted something within an hour and a half of my house, so I wasn't just driving all the time when I wanted to come out here. I wanted mature hardwoods, all wooded. I don't want to maintain anything, and I wanted it to be within my budget. And so budget is a really big thing. So use these items, make a list, pros and cons kind of list. Do you want to be on the grid, off the grid? How far away do you want to drive to get to where you're going to be? What are the neighbors like around you? And so these are all very important things to consider. And once you make that list, it'll help you narrow down your search. And then as a little bonus, I would just encourage you when buying land is to get a real estate agent. When buying a piece of property, real estate agents cost you nothing. Okay, they split their commission with whoever is selling the property. And so I had a real estate agent who worked with us and helped negotiate the price down significantly. And she was a great help and didn't cost me a dime. And so those are some things to consider when purchasing a piece of property. I want to encourage you that if you're interested in things like being off-grid, our cabin build, outdoor family adventures, minimalism, all the things that I'm passionate about, and of course, Jesus and the gospel, I would love for you to subscribe for more content.